Hi, today I'm talking about the brain work of trauma processing. And this is a part two because last time I got on, I did a video called Three Things to Understand About Trauma Processing. And I talked about the very first part, which is the goal of trauma processing. I talked about the second part, which is it's really important that the most important thing is that the body can keep up with the processing. I went off on that video. I went off so long, especially about the body, that I didn't get to the third thing. And so this video is the third thing, but it's also just a standalone video. I'm going to make it that way today so that you can watch what the brain does during trauma processing. And I encourage you to watch the first video. I'm even wearing the same shirt so you can find it. And even though it was several days ago. Anyway, I'm Rachel McLeod, and I'm a mental health therapist, a coach, and a therapist mentor. And I specialize in helping people do the brain work of resolving symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress. I am very different than a talk therapist, even though we do some talking. I'm actually helping people work with the specific part of the brain that stops the brain from being able to complete its process, its beautiful process of resolving symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress. That part of the brain can really shut down that process. And if we get that part of the brain involved with the healing trauma processing, all of a sudden trauma's process and they're done. It's very beautiful, it's very fast, and it's really working with the brain's um, natural process for this. Brains are designed to resolve traumas for us, to make sense of our world, even the painful things that occur in our world, and help us to thrive. If we can't get traumas processed, we stay in survival mode. And so that's we don't need that, and it's not very comfortable, and it's very expensive neurologically. So and it's harmful to our relationships, reduces satisfaction, all the things. So we want our brain processing traumas. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. So I'm going to dive right in. I encourage you to look at the other pieces of this because I want you to see this from your brain's perspective. This is not right. This is we want your brain to do this work. We don't want you to do the work of overcoming traumas. We want your brain to resolve these for you. So, and remember, I do want to highlight here that it's so important that the body keeps up with all of these things. I'm going to keep bringing that into this, and because it's really important. So I do invite you to go back and watch that video, and you'll understand the importance of what I'm talking about. But if you've already watched it and here you are at this video, you're ready to go. So with trauma processing, the brain work for this is the absolute first thing we're doing is we are going to help the brain process the resistance to the trauma, to processing the trauma. Remember the trauma, remember, like you need to remember, but the trauma is something that occurred that had pain in it. One part of your brain, the survival system or the limbic system, is responsible for keeping your body alive and keeping you away from pain and safe. And so here we're asking that part of the brain, hey, come with us to this really painful thing. It'll be helpful to us, right? And it can read into that trauma and be like, no, absolutely not. We're not doing that because there's pain in there. And so it refuses to participate and allow this trauma to get processed. And so that is, we need to work on that resistance piece. And this is really wonderful and gentle because we're not actually working on the trauma yet. We're working on the neurological resistance, your brain's resistance to the trauma. There's so much wisdom in the resistance. Most of trauma work is about the resistance. Your body is going to say a lot of things about this resistance, right? If you're, have you ever had a flashback where your brain is like, we're going to work on this trauma right now, and all of a sudden you just dissociate, right? Next thing you know, you're eating. The next thing you know, you're in a video game. The next thing you know, you're calling on chatting with a friend, having a good time. The next thing you know, you're deep asleep, right? Your survival system got you away from that flashback by any means necessary. And so there's right in there. So trigger the memory, and then the reaction in that space is the resistance. I want you to understand this as this is stuff. This is neurological wiring. This is subconscious programming. This is body sensations. You will find the resistance, your body talking about the resistance as well. Your body will be, you'll notice that if that memory comes up, your stomach drops, right? That is all the stuff we actually want to get processed. There's information in that. That is a thing. Your whole brain up here is designed to translate that, understand it, and understand what it means. And from all of that stuff, your brain actually makes the bridge for you to be able to process the trauma. That's what's so important about resistance. Working on resistance first is that your brain is building the bridge to work on the trauma. And you want it to do that because it'll build that bridge specifically for you. And as a therapist, I can't build that bridge for you. I have ideas. I have helped people build tons of bridges, but it has to be built by your brain. And it does that by processing the resistance. When your body gets to tell the top of your brain all the reasons why it's resisting working on that trauma, they're up there at the top. I promise, this is what's happened. There's a whole crew up there of scientists and wirers in your brain, and they're listening to that whatever that message is from the stomach. They know exactly what that is. It's already been translated by other parts of the body, and so they're like, oh, okay, you don't like this, you don't like this, you don't like this, okay, you're not going to do that, oh, it feels like this, okay. And they're taking note of everything your stomach is saying finally, because the stomach is actually, I'm going to show you how this works in a second. The stomach is actually able to complete its communication to the top of the brain. And so they're up there doing that. We're going to help with this process because not all communication gets to the top. And so they're up there listening, and then they go to work. They say, thank you very much. The stomach says, I finally was able to say my piece. It goes back down. They're all doing their own thing now. Up at the top, all your little guys that are doing this, or girls, gals, they're now working on solutions. They're like, it needs to have this, it needs to have this ingredient, it needs to be able to do this. They don't want to cross here, but if we do this and this and this and this and this, and they make something, and then you'll start noticing this. I'm going to talk about that again. You'll start noticing this, and when you actually now as a therapist, I'm going to bring people after we've done the resistance processing. I'm going to bring them back to what if we were to work on the trauma. I might not say that exact phrase, but we're bringing it back to something like that. And I'll have them peek their mind into what if I did. And if we find more resistance, we're working on that. But a lot of times, that resistance we just resolved is gone. And so there's a little bit more curiosity. And a lot of times they'll run into the next layer of resistance. And so we are going to keep working through all of that resistance and helping your brain build the bridges, right? The bridges are what we got farther into it. And your brain felt safe. You didn't dissociate. You didn't hyperventilate. You didn't go to sleep. You didn't any of the things. You actually just kept walking across the bridge and became more curious. And then you ran into the next piece of resistance. And then the clients will tell me, well, no, because, or maybe they won't say anything and they'll just lean back and they'll have or sometimes they'll sit there and their face will flush, right? Some people will absolutely freeze right there. So we're not ready. We've got more resistance, and this is really helpful. That so many people push through the resistance, and start diving into the trauma, and it's so painful that way because your brain didn't get to prepare for you. It didn't get to build what you needed to make it a gentle process. And this resistance processing, I can't tell all the material for for the healing work is right in there if we can just get that part assembled, right? If you think of all this resistance as all the pieces that your brain would have to put together like a puzzle, and all of a sudden it puts the last thing, it's like, oh, I know how we could do it. I know how we could get it processed. And then all of a sudden you feel that in real time and you're like, oh, this is awesome. And it doesn't take long to help your brain with this. Okay, now resistance is material that can be painful. It can be very painful. And so, if you've watched my videos, I'm kind of not wanting to go back into all that, but I'm going to say this really fast. How we are designed is that our body is designed to tell us all these things about our life and what's going on in reality and inside of us and our perceptions and all these things. The body sends all that information through the senses and through our neurology up past the survival system to the front of the brain. Now, the survival system, its job is to keep you safe and keep you away from pain. So if pain is moving through your nervous system, through your neurology and your senses, and it reads pain, it's going to close down the processing loops and process, and it's going to shift into a fight or flight. I need to move quickly and react quickly to get away from pain, even though the pain is the report of the body of what's going on in reality, right? And so the body will try to do the work and send the message, but all of a sudden the survival system registers pain, it stops it and sends it back down. So the body has to keep holding the information, which is why the whole thing about the body keeps the score is very accurate. The body does hold on to the traumas until it can get it processed, and it will. So that traumas keep coming up in flashbacks and all kinds of forms because the body still is holding on to it. That's not the design. It's supposed to release it to the top of the brain. They're supposed to work it out and actually build your entire neural network, which I'm going to talk about that in a second. Right? So this, we want that to complete. We want that limbic system to allow the information up. So now we're talking about processing resistance. This is a very fast, wonderful process, but the opponent to processing resistance is that limbic system, because this resistance is reports of pain, what's not working, danger, threat, right? That limbic system is like, I hear you and I'm off. We're off. We're running. We're fleeing the scene somehow. And so we want to get ahead of that because we know that's going to happen, because we understand that while this part is trying to get it registered, the limbic system is not smart. It's just like, oh, there's pain. Now, however, if we send this limbic system and survival system messages of safety at the same time that it's receiving messages of pain and threat, it is like, oh, we're good. There is pain and threat, okay, but we're actually safe. I can hear those messages. It will allow the pain and threat and danger through to the top of the brain where there's processing. So all it needs is signals of safety. Now, remember, this part of the brain is very different than your prefrontal cortex, your thinking center, and your executive functioning. This part of the brain, the limbic system, is not a logic or reasoning center. It does not care about logic and reasoning. It's not a talk center. You can talk to it till the cows come home. It doesn't care. But what it is listening to, its native language is the body. And so we can use the body to send signals to this part of the brain. Hey, we're safe. Hey, we're safe. Hey, we're safe. We can send enough signaling to allow it to open and allow the processing and healing and resting and digesting all the emotional material, right? And all of a sudden, if it allows that, the rest of the brain gets to work on it and all the awesome things get to happen. Right? And so when we're working on processing, trauma processing, the first part of the trauma that we're going to work on is the resistance. And while we're talking about all the reasons and feeling into all the reasons we don't want to do this trauma work, we're actually going to talk to the limbic system at the same time. Now, I teach my clients to use, and I guide them to use, 4 interventions. These are the ones I rely on. These are my go-to. There are other ones. I have never used all other ones to resolve a whole disorder, but I have confidently used these 4. And these ones are thought-filled therapy, emotional freedom techniques, energy medicine, and eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, EMDR. All of these they use the body to help heal. They are actually using the body, and so we're sending messages to that limbic system through the body. So we are talking about the resistance, feeling into the resistance, acknowledging the resistance, focusing on paying attention to the resistance, and using an intervention. So one of these interventions is a tapping intervention. We're just tapping on, these are meridian points. We're tapping on the body. This is an EMDR strategy, right? We're doing these things while we're paying attention to the resistance. Now, if we're doing a 1 round of EFT, let's just say, I match these with people. I want to see their brain go through these steps that I'm going to outline here in a moment. Anyway, I'm going to outline these, and so I want to see their brain go through these things, because that lets me know it's a match for their brain. It helps their brain walk through the trauma processing process. Okay, and so the brain has a process for this. I want to watch your brain walk through it. The first part of that is, can it process resistance? One round of EFT is about 30 seconds, and sometimes that's all that's needed to process the resistance because we're working with an electrical process. And if the that survival system gets out of the way, all the electricity gets to run, the electrical information gets to run. 30 seconds is a lot of electricity. So, um, okay, so we want to work through the resistance. Okay, and let me tell you this, that in trauma processing, this maybe takes a half hour, maybe takes 20 minutes, sometimes 10 minutes. Sometimes there are multiple clusters of traumas in there, and we want to break those apart and work on them. But usually, and so if there's multiple clusters that each take 20 minutes, right, we're talking about an hour, 2 hours. And that's why with complex PTSD, this process can take 2 to 6 months to really work through enough clusters to create health and wellness and to get that snowball rolling nice and big for people. So, okay, so the first thing we're doing is resistance processing, right? And every other process, we're doing the same thing. We're processing the resistance. So we're looking at actual resistance, how I really feel about doing this work. Not lies, not bravery, not false anything, just real. I really don't want to do this. I will die. I will not survive this. And we're going to use their intervention of choice. I'm going to pretend like their intervention of choice is always EFT. It's not. But it's easy and it's fast, right? So we're doing that. Now, once the resistance is gone, what we're going to see is people leaning in, right? Maybe I could. The brain has created for them the sense and the somatics of I think I could resolve this, and so I'm waiting for this. It doesn't take long to show up, and so all of a sudden they're, huh. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to jump into the trauma as deeply as we can, which sometimes is not at all. We're just going to walk on the outside of it and rub on top of it like this. Uh, right? There's strategies for that. I teach all of these kinds of strategies in my program, Inner World Transformation, for people who cannot work with me directly or who need to work very separately. Um, and so I want this to be available. I want people to be able to work with their inner world and do their healing work. So there are strategies. Some people, their brain is like, we are ready. We have everything we need. We're going right to the center of this. Other people, they need to work on the outside of it for a little while, and then the brain will go in layer by layer by layer by layer and resolve the entire thing. We want to get the brain to pull out all of the pain from the trauma first. That's the very first thing that happens. The next thing that happens, I'm sure this is exactly what occurs, is that your little healing, now the data processors, all your little nerds, jump into the trauma and they start taking notes and looking at it, and they start making the translations and the information and understanding, and they start analyzing this trauma, and it's happening very, very fast. The next thing you're going to see are insights, epiphanies, and updated beliefs. Automatic. This once an analysis team gets in there, the rest is very automatic. You don't really need to help the brain with this. I'm just showing you this because I want you to see behind the scenes, because if you're effectively processing trauma, you're going to watch yourself go through this, and you're going to start seeing epiphanies just show up in your head, and you're going to be like, oh, Rachel said something about this. Yes, you are in the end parts of this. Now, at any time, the pain might show up again, so we need to keep supporting, because the people, your little pain guys, need to jump in there and do their pain processing work, right? And so that the analysis team gets in there and can do the analysis. The analysis people can't get in there until the pain is gone. And so sometimes we'll do it, canvas it in layers, and then keep walking in and clearing areas. So um, then we're gonna start. Then what you'll notice in the after analysis is your brain starts reworking and reworking your maps, your internal and external maps of the world, creating a more accurate understanding, which means that you're going to get from point A to point B in a much more direct and effective, efficient way. This happens automatically. It's awesome to watch. People think this is pretty magical. It's not. It's brain function. Brains are designed to do that. And then you have improved strategies, because now we can get there more directly. The brain is understanding and gets it, and it start being more effective with the strategies. Then next, you'll install new ways of being. All these new strategies get installed and integrated into how you are in the world. That's fun. And then the completion really looks like being able to shift towards out of survival mode and into thrive and health and wellness. So that, because now that they understand where the dangers are accurately, not globally, right? Not everything is dangerous out here, which is absolutely what, before a trauma gets processed, that's how the stance brains have to take, because they don't know. Right? We want to walk them through processing the trauma so that they know and they can understand accurately what's dangerous and what's not, because they still have the job to keep you alive and well. Okay. Having said that, this that's the process. So the part you really got to help your brain with is the resistance to the trauma and the pain in the trauma. And so once those two things get done, you'll watch the other things kick up or get done enough that the brain is like, oh, let's throw the analysis team in there. And then we're running. Okay. So I want to invite you to try this way of working with your brain. I have a free program called Interventions for Inner World Transformation. That's available to you for free. I've added that in the descriptions part of this. Jump in there, learn my interventions. It takes about 15 minutes. And then as you're trying them out, you should notice this stuff. You should notice these things occurring within a couple of minutes. It, yeah, I teach you how to trial this and experiment uh, in that training program. So I invite you to try that out. The other thing is, if you get a working intervention, you're like, ooh, and you're like, how can I use this to resolve all of my issues or even overcome my disorder or whatnot? My program, Inner World Transformation, is my process for walking my therapy clients through that, my coaching clients, and helping people heal and resolve. So that's available to you as well. And that's it for today. I'll talk to you all later. Take care. Bye.